Chapter 12 of The Whistling Mountain by Mary Daem. The picnic. This was the day for the picnic. When David heard his father moving in the kitchen, he dressed himself without being told and hurried to join him. "Are we going, Dad?" he asked, holding out his hands to the warm stove. "It looks as if it's going to be a beautiful day. The sun is going to shine, and even though everything is still very wet, it needn't bother us. We'll dress for it. We'll have a good breakfast, pack the lunch, and then we'll be off." "Oh, Dad, do you think we can get far enough up the mountain to see the marmots?" "Well, I won't promise. Your mother might not be able to keep up with us, and we don't want to tire her. We'll take our time and enjoy ourselves. We might even try a bit of fishing when we come to the river." "Would we catch anything, do you think? Are there fish in it?" "Oh, yes, small trout. They make very good eating. If we catch enough, we'll take them with us and fry them for our lunch." David looked to make sure his father wasn't just teasing. He wasn't. And it was going to be a wonderful day, a wonderful, wonderful, super sort of day. It was hard to sit still and eat breakfast as usual, and harder still to help wipe the dishes and tidy up before packing the lunch. David was allowed to help with everything. He rolled hard-boiled eggs into squares of newspaper, and he remembered the salt and the pepper. He put newspaper around the blackened tin lard pail to be used for boiling water, and he helped stow away cookies and cups and paper plates and a small bag of marshmallows. There was a square of butter for frying the fish if they caught any, and hot dogs to heat on sharp sticks in case they didn't. Then the camera must be found and put in an outside pocket of the rucksack, and dry socks to be taken along, just in case they got their feet wet. It seemed to David that they would never be ready to start. They packed the matches in the waterproof case, and Mr. Dunn drew the string on top of the rucksack and buckled the flap. "I'm starting to feel like one of the pack horses," he joked. "Pick up those fishing rods, David, and we'll start." Ring. One long, one short, and one long again. "Don't answer it, Dad," David begged. Mr. Dunn picked up the receiver and listened. He said yes, and certainly, once or twice, and he put the receiver up very, very slowly. "That was the park superintendent at Field. He'll be here by noon, and he's bringing his wife and 2 daughters. I'm as sorry as I can possibly be, David, but I'll have to be here." David looked at his father, and his mouth began to tremble. He stuck his chin out and tried very hard not to cry like a baby. "You promised we could go," he said indignantly. "Why did they have to come today and spoil our picnic? Now I won't get to see the marmots." "David, I know you're disappointed. I'm disappointed too, and I'm sure your mother is. But it's just one of those things that happen sometimes." He put his hand on David's shoulder, but David shrugged it away. "We've still got the morning. We'll get to the river in half an hour, and we'll have time to fish and go a short way up the trail." "Come on, son," said his mother. "Let's not spoil the whole day. It's Daddy's holiday, too." David tried to smile at his mother, but he didn't manage it too well. It was a glum little party setting out for the trail that led across the Swiftwater and up Mount Carmichael, David's whistling mountain. The sun shone, but it was chilly, and steam rose in thin clouds from the damp earth. A pine grosbeak clung precariously to a hanging fir cone, but David didn't see it. He was too busy scowling down at his feet. Just where the trail branched, Mr. Dunn stopped and bent for a better look at some deep tracks in the wet mud. "Mountain lion," he said softly. "Look, David, he's a big one and probably old. There aren't many of them in this park, and we could do without this one. They bother the game." David looked at the deep paw marks. "It looks like a big cat's paw marks, Dad. They're pretty fresh, too, aren't they?" "Yes, and a mountain lion is like a big cat, son, a huge one." "Do you think we'd better go back, Bill?" David's mother looked nervously at the trail ahead. "There won't be any danger with the 3 of us. From the look of these tracks, he's traveling fast, much faster than we are." They started along the Mount Carmichael trail, and David forgot how disappointed he was and tried to hurry to get to the river. He knew that it was not too far. He hadn't wandered a great distance into the bush when he had come across it before. The tracks of the mountain lion appeared again in a soft, oozy spot in the trail, and there were deer tracks too, and a grouse had walked from one side of the cleared trail to the other. David's father pointed out the tracks, and he told them fascinating facts about mountain lions and timber wolves and other unwelcome residents of the park. But it was David who spotted the hummingbird's nest in the fork of a willow bush and stood on tiptoe to see inside. It was empty, and he broke off the branch and laid nest and branch beside the trail until they would be going back. "Wait till I show that nest to Eric," he boasted happily. "I'll bet he hasn't got one of those." And it was David who found the first green huckleberries. "What are these, Dad?" he asked, picking off a branch simply loaded with green and red berries. "Those are huckleberries. They aren't quite ripe yet, but there should be some ripe ones in the open where the sun gets at them. Eric said his father takes him huckleberry picking every year. Do you think we could go too?" Mr. Dunn pretended to be thinking hard. "If you prove to be a good climber, I'm sure we could. Do you think you could make us a huckleberry pie if we picked you the berries, Mary?" he asked David's mother. "I certainly could. Eric's mother said she cans quarts and quarts of them every year and makes huckleberry pies all winter long. She's promised to show me how to can them. That is, if you two get me any berries." David trudged happily along beside his father. He knew they would reach the river soon. "You know, son, maybe you won't believe this, but we humans aren't the only ones who go huckleberry picking." David shifted the fishing rods and looked up. "As soon as the berries are ripe, the bears go berry picking. They make the best pickers of all." "How can they?" David asked, wrinkling his forehead and pushing the loose hair back from his eyes. "Well, they're smarter than we think they are. They look for the bushes that are loaded with berries. Then they reach up with their front paws and pull the bushes down to their mouths, open their mouths wide, stretch out their tongues, curl them around the berries, and chomp, chomp. The bushes are cleaned as slick as a whistle." "Wouldn't they eat all the leaves that way?" "Yes, but they don't seem to mind. They spit them out, swallow the berries, and go on to the next bush. Their tongues get blue and their teeth are blue too." Mr. Dunn laughed just thinking about it. David was laughing too, but even so, he was the first to see the river. "There it is," he shouted, and ran for the bridge. "David," Mr. Dunn called him back, "we'll fish from the bridge, but don't go on it alone. If you ever fell in that water, I'd never get you out." David and his mother and father sat down on the bridge and put black fly hooks on their lines. Mr. Dunn put the rucksack carefully beside him, and no sooner had David thrown his line onto the water than he caught a fish. He shouted and yelled with excitement. The fish flopped on the boards of the bridge, and David dropped his rod and grabbed for his catch. It flopped, wriggled, and fell through an opening in the boards and back into the water. David looked ready to cry. "Never mind, son. Better luck next time. He was just a little fellow." Mr. Dunn showed David how to rewind the reel. The next fish gulped David's hook almost before it reached the water. The line tightened and slipped under the bridge. As Mr. Dunn had a fish on his line too, he couldn't help. So David planted his feet firmly on the damp boards and pulled. It wasn't the conventional way to catch a fish, but it worked. He got the fish out of the water, and that was what really mattered. It was bigger than the first one he had caught, and his hands shook with pride and excitement as, with his parents watching, he carefully eased the hook from its mouth, tapped it on the head, and threaded a forked stick through its gills. "That'll make a meal all by itself, son. Good work." David glowed. It was so wonderful to be praised instead of scolded. Time simply seemed to stop. He had never had so much fun in his life before. The sun streamed through the branches and set the ripples winking. The rain of the day before had cleared the air, and everything shone and glistened. It was truly a day for a boy to enjoy. David turned to his father to make some remark, and his father put his finger to his lips and pointed. David and his mother both turned slowly and looked to where Mr. Dunn had pointed, and there, watching them from the bank of the river, was a small black bear. "He smells the fish," David whispered. "Yes, I think he does. We'll have to stop fishing now. We've caught our limit, and we have to leave some for other fishermen." Mr. Dunn looked at his watch. "If we hurry, we'll just have time for a tiny fire. No time to cook our fish, but we can toast marshmallows." David had been all set to start complaining. He was having so much fun, but the fire and the marshmallows sounded fun, and if some fish were left in the river, they could come another day. David's mother had been glancing nervously towards the bear, which still peered at them from the bushes up ahead. "Watch," Mr. Dunn said, smiling. He put his lips together and whistled once, a shrill, piercing sound. The bear nearly fell over backwards, and they could hear him crashing through the bushes above the noise of the running water. David laughed, but at the same time he wished that he had given that whistle. He'd have to keep on trying and find out how the marmots did it. Whistling was good for so many things. It was stupid not to know how. He did just exactly as his father told him for a change, and helped get the fire going with dry splinters of wood from a fallen tree, and he cut himself a long willow stick and sharpened the end. For the first time in his life, he stuck a marshmallow on the end of a stick and toasted it over a campfire. Nothing had ever tasted so good, though half of it was burned and the other half not cooked at all. And before he stopped, he had eaten 12. "We'll put the fire out now. Let's get every spark covered. Nothing would catch after that rain we had yesterday, but it's best to be perfectly sure. I wish we could stay all day. I wish we didn't have to go back." David looked up and tried to see his mountain, but they were in the valley and too close to it. "And I didn't get up to those marmots," he said to himself, "but I will. Only I wish there weren't so many bears around, and now a mountain lion." But the sun shone down, and the fish looked beautiful hanging on the willow stick, and David's stomach felt full. It was hard to be afraid. That's the end of chapter 12.